Hello. Good evening. I'm sorry for all the people that love lines, like all my lines are out today. I hope you're all having a beautiful evening. Welcome to Livestream. Let me tell you a little bit about Livestream. So if you want to join Livestream in the future, so if you're watching the recorded version of this, I normally start the live stream at 6:10. I'm going to change my website and so people know this more clearly. So I normally start about 6:10, and for the first 10 minutes I just have live stream joining soon. And then I just do a tiny bit of talking, and then I do a meditation for about 20 minutes or 30 minutes. Then at about 6:30, I know it's different in everybody's country, but you just have to work out in your time. At 6:30 or 20 to 7, I start doing an introduction. Then about 7 o'clock, I do questions and answers. And then at 8 o'clock, I finish the stream. So that is the lineup for the stream. And the videos can't be edited really afterwards. You have to like not download them, but you can't like edit so easily an online video. So I like to keep the whole talk up. So I know some people complain about it not being edited and the silence and all these different things. But there is another channel called Lisa Cairns Video Clips, which isn't made by me, but it's made by another gentleman called Osborne. And I'm so sorry that I don't pronounce your name correctly, Osborne. Yeah. I would like to be able to pronounce it correctly. It's a Norwegian name, so maybe people out there who are Norwegian or from Scandinavian country can recognize the name. I think there's some letters in the words that I find hard to pronounce. But anyway, so he does the channel and he edits clips of the talks and he puts titles on the talks which describe what's being talked about, and you can subscribe to his channel. It's in the link below, so you can find it down there somewhere. And it's also you can just sorry, I just drifted off into another subcategory thought then, but you can also go onto my channel and you can find it linked to my channel, like associate channel. There we go. Sorry, I went off into another thought strain there. On my website, you can also find 2 things for sale. You can find a book for sale for the love of everything, which is transcribed talks from like 2011 and 2012. So it's a little bit different from the way that I talk, but it's a very beautiful book. And I didn't write it, it's transcribed. Yeah, so you can find that on Amazon and on Kindle. And you can also buy some videos from a retreat that I did in 2018 as well, that do like chakra meditation and like talks about consciousness and non-duality in front of an audience. You can also book sessions on my website, but I'm normally booked out like 3 or 4 months in advance, and I rarely have openings. You know, like sometimes I get cancellations, but not so many. So people write to me asking to be put on the waiting list, but not so. Unless there's like a retreat cancelled or something, or I was going on holiday and that gets cancelled, which happened a lot this year, then there's not so many available spots. Maybe I talk a little bit about what I do in the sessions. So I have on my website 2 different sessions that you can subscribe for. You can do one on non-duality or one on like separate self and seeking energy. And the reason that I split that up is that I want people to be conscious of the 2 different subjects. But when we start the session, I always ask, or not always, but I predominantly ask, like, is there something you would like to work on today? So, or is there something you'd like to look at? So it's either they take me into non-duality or into the separate self. So if you sign up for a non-duality separate session and then you want to work on the separate self, then we can. If you don't know the difference, then that's fine. We can look at that in the session as well. And what I tend to do is I tend to, if I'm talking about non-duality, I'm pointing to what is, but what I tend to do first of all is look to see what's happening in the body and relaxing the body. So looking to see if there's any discomfort or repetitive thoughts that are happening. And then I look at ways to relax that, or for you to get used to bringing that into your experience without trying to avoid it. So that's like looking. Normally what I do is someone will tell me something and then I'll begin to ask how that makes you feel. Where do you feel that in your body? And then I will sit with the person in that area and then I will ask them questions. And it might make the feeling more intense or more strong, and then you relate it to other experiences in life. See and connect how it's part of your thought processes. So it's something that most probably began in childhood, and then it just goes on to different subjects and different stories. And then maybe I will then begin to speak about non-duality to relax that energy in the body. So talking about that that's not who you are, there's something bigger than that. Or I might get you to talk about positive experiences or not often, opposite experiences to what's happening in your body. So if you're feeling like you're not good enough, like talking about where you are good enough in your life. So that's what I predominantly do in sessions. It's not so good to book a session if you just want to get to know me or have a chat, like about like more, like predominantly what I like to do with people in sessions is like work with what's going on inside of them. And most people do it for that reason. Sometimes people book sessions and then when the session comes, they feel great and they've got nothing to talk about. So then maybe we have a more relaxed chat, but it's better to have something to work on. That's what's best, to come with something that you want to work on, either it be non-duality or seeking energy. But at the same time, if it ends up just being more relaxed chat and reflection and you telling me your story, then that's okay too. But I think I'm better used if I'm working with someone in that way. Yeah. I never normally advertise these things. I don't know why I am today. It's interesting. Like advertising or bringing them up. And yeah, that is that. And then I do these talks every Sunday at 6 p.m. French time. And anybody is welcome to join. If you want to ask me questions today, then it's Lisa Cairns 12 is my Skype address. And you can either write a question or you can call in. If you want to call in though, please put call me before, because we're not in the same time. I'm normally a few 20 seconds ahead of you. Sometimes only a couple of seconds, but okay. So now a little bit of silent sitting. So when we're doing the silent sitting, this is not an excuse to shame yourself that you can't do something, or beat yourself up that you're not doing enough of it, or putting it down because it feels scary to you. All it is sitting. There's no goal, there's no destination. Even if I suggest a meditation technique and you do it, there's no winners. Like it's you know, the meditation technique where I say suggesting to count to 10 and then coming back to 1. If you go off to 9,999, the fact that you participated is amazing. Like, it's not that you lose because you can't stay to number 10. It's the reason the exercise is done is because it requires concentration. So by having that time at the 10th breath and coming back to number 1, that requires you to concentrate. If you just kept counting to 100, you can go on to automatic. But the fact that you have a number which you have to bring it back, it means you have to follow the numbers. That's why it's designed. But if you fail to concentrate, that's not a failure. The fact that you're sitting there doing it is the success. Like, meditation isn't a destination. So and it's not about you becoming enlightened. It's not about you achieving something or being better than your neighbor. It's just presenting yourself. And the presenting is the success. I was taught by great meditation teachers at the London Buddhist Centre. East London, it's called the London, but it's actually in East London, it's in Bethnal Green. And they were always so clear that just presenting yourself is the success. And then even if you don't present yourself, like, just being open to it is the success. Like, there's no failure. Like, it's not another reason to shame yourself or to tell yourself that you're a failure because you haven't done it. Like, being open to it is a success. Even being close to it is a success. We're often always setting these poles, these markers, barge poles. Is that it? Barge poles, markers, to judge yourself. And this subject isn't about judging yourself. This is about there is no self. So it's not about you getting to something. And the meditation isn't about seeing through the self, because who would see through the self? The meditation is simply about relaxing the self, relaxing the person, and in that relaxation, then something else is introduced. And I suppose that's a method that seems to be happening through Lisa, even though it really isn't a method. But because I really don't see someone there that could or couldn't do a method. But something that seems to be arising is me recommending settling the person down, because even when I work with people in one-to-one sessions, I intuitively go to settle someone down before I start speaking about non-duality. And then when the person is more relaxed, then it just naturally comes for me to speak about non-duality. And I intuitively feel a bit opposed to speaking about non-duality if the person's not settled. Like, it feels wrong. It feels like I'm adding to their story or something. Like, I'm adding to their seeking energy to avoid what's actually happening. So intuitively, I always go to settle people down. And then once the person's more settled, then non-duality is spoken of. That doesn't mean it's the right way to do non-duality. It's just most probably the path in which the Lisa character travelled. So therefore, that's what seems to come through my body now, is there was a lot of relaxation that needs to happen. But if someone came to non-duality already quite relaxed, then maybe they won't teach like that. So it doesn't mean it's the right way. We love that, the mind. It's like, this is the way it is. It's just what comes through this machine. And what comes through this machine is going to be dependent on what this machine has interacted with in the past. Like, I'm not going to suddenly start speaking out of character and start speaking Japanese. I'm going to speak in what more than likely I have engaged in. But sometimes that can also be toppled over, that you get people that channel things that are completely nothing to do with them, what they've experienced. So the meditations that I recommend is one, moving your attention back to presence. So every time your mind drifts off, like moving your attention back to what's happening, moving it to consciousness or to the I am. Another meditation practice that I recommend is counting the breath. So every time you breathe in, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to number 10. And then when you get to number 10, you bring it back to number 1. And that's called the mindfulness of breathing. And then the third one is not doing anything, just sitting there and allowing you to drift off into thought, allowing your mind to do whatever it wants or to be present, just allowing it to rest. Know at the same time that it's illusory, that there is a me, a separate me here that can prescribe to a separate you there. There is words coming out, and those words in one consciousness might be heard or not heard, and there might be action taken or not taken, and whatever happens is perfect. So whether you do it or you don't do it, it is perfection. The person that does it isn't closer to enlightenment. The person that doesn't do it isn't further away from enlightenment. It's just what's happening. When there is more surrender to what's happening, then you begin to see that there isn't actually individuation, there isn't doership. Okay, now I'm just going to ring my invisible bell. Actually, maybe I can make a bell quickly. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, that doesn't work so well. But yeah, now we start meditating. My backdrop was just about to drop. Nice. Okay. Maybe we can begin. That was strange. I went to speak to you in a different language. I suppose that's what happens when you're learning different languages. Okay, so what is the title of this talk? Let's see. Non-duality. What does consciousness mean? Okay. What does consciousness mean? It's a pretty simple title. So consciousness means so many different things to different people. I came from the school of like Ramesh Balsekar, Roger Castillo, and Ramesh has the book, Consciousness Speaks, and he used consciousness. A lot of teachers use awareness, and I understand why they use awareness, because in psychology we use the conscious and the subconscious. So that can become confusing. And I use awareness as like personal awareness, like the ability to move attention. So I use awareness as attention. So it is complex. And some people that talk about non-duality don't even bring in the word consciousness. They just say this is nothing as everything and everything as nothing. And that consciousness is just a functioning. Which I'm open for that way of teaching, and I can see like that, I suppose, is the greater truth. But consciousness is a great way to speak maybe in the beginning. Well, maybe this isn't the beginning, these aren't beginning classes, but it's a great way to speak maybe to lots of people. Like the nothing and everything bit is something that's got to be deeply seen. So that consciousness is not a thing. It's nothing appearing as everything. The experiencer, the consciousness, is empty and is all things. It knows itself by its appearances. But this is really complex to put into language and to communicate. And consciousness is a great bridge. Like once when a friend explained it to me like this, or they said that consciousness was like a bridge, or like an angel with one wing in the everything and one wing in the nothingness. Or consciousness was the bridge between everything and nothingness. And I think that's like a really beautiful description. But it's like poetry. It can't really be described really accurately. Like I can hear really analytical minds like, what does that mean? What does that mean? So when I'm talking about consciousness, I'm talking about if you had anesthesia, you would be unconscious. If you got whacked over the head, passed out, you're unconscious. There's no consciousness of anything. When you actually have anesthesia and when you get knocked out or when you're in deep sleep, there is actually consciousness there, but it's just not conscious of anything. So there's nothing appearing, so there's nothing happening. So that in order for there to be consciousness, there needs to be things to be conscious of, otherwise it's non-existence and it's just over instantly. So you don't experience that, obviously, because there's no consciousness. But when I'm saying that, is that, like, I'm talking about the consciousness that's there when you wake up. And when you wake up in the mornings from deep sleep, you think you wake up and you describe yourself as a name, you describe yourself as a title, you describe yourself as a thing, and you think, I've woken up. But actually, the world has come back. So in deep sleep, there is consciousness, but there's no world. So there's no experience of it. There can only be experiencing with things. So it's the world, and that doesn't actually happen because it's like in a heartbeat, it's in an instant. So and then the world comes back, and then shortly after that you come back and you think you've woken up, and that's the way we talk about it. That's language, like I woke up. But actually the world came back, so things started to appear again. So then there was experience and time and space and distance. And then you came in and you said, I am conscious, whereas consciousness has been there the whole time. But the consciousness is your base, and it's actually your birthright as well. Like when you wake up in the morning, you don't sit there prior to waking up and say, okay, I'm going to turn on my consciousness now. Consciousness happens and it's out of the person's control. It gets turned on. And maybe sometimes you think, oh God, please don't wake up. I don't want to wake up this morning. Or maybe you're like, yeah, wake up. But you don't have a choice. You might think, oh, I turned my alarm clock on, so I have a choice. But actually you don't. You don't have a choice whether the consciousness comes on or not. You don't have any control over that. And you kind of know it because a lot of people are afraid of death. So they know that consciousness doesn't belong to them. Like it isn't controlled by the person. So when you wake up in the morning, the first thing that gets switched on is consciousness. It's already switched on. Okay, so first thing that gets switched on is the world. And there is this awakeness that happens. And this awakeness is not found somewhere. You'll never find consciousness. You'll never get out a magnifying glass and be like, I found it. Or a mirror and be able to see this consciousness that's watching the person. It's looking. The person always wants to find consciousness. But it's like trying to catch air in a net. It's impossible. So the person hears this and it's like, what is consciousness? I want to understand it. And you can understand it to an extent. This can be like really juicy to the person. But in the understanding, there is something that's watching that. So there is something that knows that's happening. There is a person understanding it. There is thought understanding it. And then there's something that's watching that. So all experiences have to be watched by something. And you is an experience. So everything you can describe about yourself is something that appears. So if it's something that appears, it's not the experiencer. So I like candy. I am good. I am bad. I am righteous. I am beautiful. I am ugly. I am happy. I've done that one. I am rich. I am poor. I am fat, I'm thin. So notice that all of the descriptions that you have about yourself, I'm white, I'm black, I'm American, I'm English, I'm Iraqi, all of these descriptions are being experienced. So there's something prior to you. So there's something prior to the thoughts, to the feelings, to the names, to the labels, to the ideas. And there's also something prior to the one that's trying to get to spirituality. So there's something that's watching that. So you could imagine it a bit like virtual reality. So everything that appears in the virtual reality is, so if you're in one of those headsets watching a virtual reality, everything that appears in the virtual reality isn't the one that's watching the virtual reality. You could do it about the film as well. Everything that appears in the film on the screen isn't the person watching the film. You could go the other way and you could be like, everything is you, everything is consciousness. But we're just going the nothing route at the moment. It's like such a contradiction, and our language can't really sustain it. So anything that appears isn't it. So consciousness isn't found in someone that understands something, because that would be a limitation, that would be a thing, that would be a separation. So consciousness isn't found in a thought, in a feeling, in an experience, in bliss, in goodness, in badness, in righteousness, in time, in space. Consciousness is that which knows it. So it's just like if you imagine a film, so there's somebody sitting in a cinema watching a film, and there's a character that's trying to tell everybody that they're all in a film, and trying to point out to the audience member, to show everyone that they're in a film. But if that audience member isn't part of the film, if they're just watching the film, then the actress or the actor in the film can't show you the audience. It's like a recorded film. So it can't point outside the film. It can't point to the audience member. It can't point to the one that's watching the film. It can only be happening inside the film. So the one that's like, wake up, look, there's somebody watching us, there's something watching us. And you can't find that within the film, unless that was part of the film. You could do it the other way around. You could say the person in the film is trying to tell all the other actors that this is a film being projected onto a screen, and she can't find the screen in the film. So she's like, everyone, look, this is being projected onto a screen. And she can't find that screen in the film. Just like you can't find consciousness in the film. So you can't find consciousness in experiences. So that which is watching cannot be defined as a thing, cannot be found in a thing. It's watching, it's experiencing. And that's who you truly are, this watching. And this watching is empty, and it's limitless. It doesn't stop or start anywhere. So this watching is everything. It's not separate from the things that it sees. And that's your experience. Like, am I inside or outside of your consciousness? Is this wall behind you inside or outside of your consciousness? We often think we're conscious, and we are conscious, and our consciousness stops here, and then everything else happens outside of that. Whereas that's not true. Your experience is everything's appearing inside consciousness. It's not even actually inside. Everything is consciousness, because you don't experience an outside, but it's just words. Who you are is free. What you are as consciousness has never started or stopped. It's never existed in time. It's never going somewhere. It's never good or bad. It's just here. It's just present, experiencing. What happens is the consciousness and the person seem to get entwined, so there is an attachment to the person. And then it believes that I am conscious. I'm the person. I've done good things, I've done bad things, I've made mistakes, I'm right, I'm wrong, I'm guilty, I'm shameful. And none of that is true. There is no person. There is an appearance of the person, so you could say the character appears with the body, and the character seems to be time-based. But there also is no character. Like, where is the character now? You're not guilty for anything the character did. The character is a play that's happening. But that's not speaking on the character level. Like, the character might feel guilty, but that's not who you are. Who you are is beyond that. And the character that feels guilty is something that belongs to a body. It's a pattern of thought that arises in the brain, and then the body has a vibration with that guilt. Like, it's a pattern that arises in the body. And there's nothing wrong or right with that, it's just what the body does. But that's not you, that's not the experiencer. What happens is that vibration appears, that one that feels guilty appears, and then the consciousness, and then they meld together. And it feels like that guilty person is listening and is watching. Whereas that guilty person or non-guilty person is an experience happening in who you are. And it couldn't be any other way. Like, it's not in your control. That person is happening. This, and on the human level, the non-duality can cut a lot of like strings to distorted psychological games that are played with the person. When the person believes that they're the doer, then they create lots of excess thinking and dramas that aren't true. So it can relax the psychology of the person. It could also like have a negative effect on the psychology of the person. Could make them feel meaningless or something on the psychological level. But that's what non-duality isn't meant to be, a personal thing, although I can see how non-duality can relax the person. It's an impersonal thing. It's pointing to something that's beyond that. Like, your essence isn't guilty. Your essence isn't shameful. Your essence hasn't done anything wrong. And that's who and what you always are. Neither is the character. The character is a formation appearing that's out of the character's control. The character is being played. That was aggressive. What happens when the consciousness and the person are attached is that seeking appears. So when you are detached Or when you're attached to the person, there is a detachment from consciousness. There is a feeling of losing consciousness, even though you're not conscious of that. There's a feeling of losing it, and it creates seeking. And this seeking is the belief that happiness is found in time, whereas happiness is found in this moment. It's not found in time. So it's not found in getting something. It's found right here, pardon me. Okay, maybe we begin with the questions. Okay. So if you want to ask a question, or if you want to phone in, if you're then it's Lisa Cairns 12, and then you can write call me if you want to speak. Hi Malfred, dear Lisa. The new leadership at work are changing the work situation in a way that I do not approve of. I reacted with depression and despair. I find ways to find peace and relief by making suggestions for another solution, or that I tell myself I do not want to have anything to do with their way of thinking or acting, or I promise myself I will not compromise my integrity. The peace I find does not last. Is it the wrong peace? Does all this show? Oh, yes. If you want to call, then just call me, please. Thanks, and I will get to you after I've finished reading this question and answering it. Does this all show that I am identified with being a compassionate person in service of others? How would the solution appear if I was not identified? So the difference, if there wasn't identification, is that seeking energy, that agitation that comes with it, that feels like you have to do something. And it's like a movement. It's not necessarily behavior, because dependent on the way that you're conditioned socially and genetically, you'll have a particular response that might be reactive against it, might be defensive against it. But then there's this agitation that comes in where it feels like you can't rest. And then that shows the seeking energy in that, because you can rest. Whatever happens is perfect. It doesn't mean, though, that you don't react to them and you don't quit because of the way they're treating people. It also doesn't mean that's the solution either. So it's this agitation that's felt. Like your happiness is not dependent on the outcome of your work situation. So it's most probably like triggering an old trauma in your body, which could be a lot of things. For example, like a fear of authority or a fear of badness. And then you can find that in your body. Like, where is this fear of badness? Where is the discomfort? You can find it in your chakra areas. So maybe it's in the heart, like a fear of badness, a fear of, and then under authority, that they're going to hurt you. And underneath it, maybe what it is this is just an example. This isn't saying what you feel, Malfred. I'm just giving an example for people to see. It's like a fear deep down of abandonment. If badness happens, then you'll be deeply abandoned or something. So it's just coming down to the deepest feeling in that chakra area and allowing it to be there. And once you give it space to be, then you begin to bring yourself out of it. So you begin to see that that's not true, that you can't be abandoned. Nobody can hurt you. No one can reject you. And you can do, if that doesn't work, like using non-duality to bring yourself out of it, then you can do maybe positive things like remembering experiences where you were loved, where you were embraced, where you weren't abandoned. So imagining the embrace of someone. You could make up somebody that embraces you. Now, these are just examples to bring yourself out of that discomfort. So the more that we get used to these movements in the body, they're not something to run away from, they're simply feelings. And the more that we can neutralize those feelings, so they come up, there's nothing wrong with them coming up, there's nothing wrong with them being experienced, but then we can also move ourselves through that, the more that the seeking energy dissipates. You have to get away from it. There's more of a surrender in embracing that. And then they move through the body and they stop being something that plays on your mind all the time and then wakes you up in agitation. And then when that begins to relax, then you can begin to see that presence is all that's wanted. This moment is all that's wanted. Nice, I hope that makes sense. Thanks, Malfred, for your question. Hey, Isabel. So on my way to meet 5 movers at location again, so exhausted, feel like I'm going to fall over or pass out. I don't know how I'm going to make it, sweetheart. You can do it, Izzy. You can do it. I send you lots of love. And you can let them do it. You just have to watch. You're allowed to sit down and rest. Thank you, Lisa. This is from Osborne. I like the way you pronounce my name, Osborne from Norway. Oh, thank you for you being kind. Yeah. Hi, Gerald. Hi. Hi, Kirshen. Hi, Lisa. I'm watching your live stream. May I be able to ask you some questions later? Call me. Okay, I'll just have to get my headset. Une moment. Une moment. So this is Kirshan. I'm going to call. Get ready, Kirshan. I'm just undoing my headset and plugging myself in. Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oops,
How is
sorry.
it that you pronounce your name? Kersham? Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Brilliant.
How is it that you pronounce your name? Kersham?
Wait.
Oh. Can you hear me, Kersham?
Hello. There's a
Can you
delay.
hear me okay? Yeah, there's not a delay. You just got to stop listening off YouTube. How is it that you pronounce your name? Kersham? Like I'm talking to you through Skype. Can you hear me, Kersham?
There's a delay.
Yeah, there's not a delay. You just got to stop listening off YouTube.
Oh.
Like I'm talking.
Can you hear
There
me
we go. Yeah. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Hello.
Hello? Hello? It says my microphone's working. Talking to you through Skype.
Oh, sorry. I don't know what's happening.
Actually, I can tell you, Kirshan, because you should be watching. You can go to Skype. So if you go to Skype and then you tap on audio and video settings, and then you'll see test audio, and you can test that your audio is working. I think that your audio is not working. You test it in audio and video settings. Okay, I just move on to another question where you test that, Kirshan. Hey, Layard. Nice to be with you, Lisa. Thank you for explaining all of that, Lisa. I probably will have a question sometimes. Call me. Okay. We'll call Layard now. Hello. Hello?
I'm turning my YouTube off and my Skype on. Okay.
Nice.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can hear me okay?
Yes, Lisa.
Oh, nice. So how may I help you today?
I'm fine. Well, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I have a lot of respect for you and your mission and your goal, and I just want to send you a lot of love and hope that you're protected during the quarantine and everybody else in your saga. I wanted to ask a question that I can get off to free it up. You know, I'm 65 years old and I've been doing this for so long and for many decades. And, you know, I listen to you and everybody on the YouTube channel and Muji a lot. And I understand what awareness is and the difference between awareness and then what we normally perceive as who we are, our thoughts and perceptions and all that. I really get that. And sometimes during my meditation, it helps me to create that mental framework so that I can eventually let go of it. My question to you is regarding, you know, for someone, how do you put into perspective maybe something in our lives that we've been struggling with our whole life, something that we want or that we want to get rid of, you know, but I'm not talking about a laundry list, maybe just one thing.
Mm.
And my perspective is that whatever bothers me the most is really how can I transcend that, and what what meaning can I give myself to give value to this challenge in my life instead of feeling like I'm a victim to feeling like I'm a loser and all these losing in terms of this issue and feeling negativities about it. And that's it. And then
Yeah.
I can, if you want me, I can get off.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for your question. I really appreciate it. And it's so funny how sometimes people ask questions and it's something that's been coming up in my life. Like, so this question actually came up this morning between another person and myself. I don't want to expose the other person, so it's like trying to think how I define them. And to me, it's a psychological issue. It's not to do with non-duality, but what can happen is the psychological issue can be confused with seeking, and the person thinks if I get rid of this psychological issue, then I will be happy and I will be at peace. So that's the part. The seeking energy is the part where it's related to non-duality, but the psychological issue is the issue, like your brain is producing thoughts and your body is producing sensations that are opposed to certain experiences or opposed to certain issues. And then there is a seeking energy that comes up that then believes that happiness will be found if you don't have that issue. And that's not true. And that can extend to all types of things. So say if in childhood you had a lot of trauma, you didn't have very stable parents, your conditioning is maybe going to be more difficult than somebody that had more stable and loving parents. So you're going to have more attachment issues. Maybe there'll be more issues with close relationships. And maybe it's something that you'll have to work on your whole life, because those first 4 or 5 years of childhood are maybe very strong in growing the way that your body responds to things. And the acceptance of that can sometimes be very difficult, because you might perceive that if you weren't like that, then you would be happier, and that's not true. Happiness and freedom comes from presence, not from behavior and not from particular conditioned responses. Like I have difficult behaviors in certain situations. Like I didn't always have a secure childhood, and so I have to work on relating with people in the way I will relate with people. And that's most probably a lifelong endeavor that I'll have. And that's okay to have these painful responses, to say if somebody treats you in a certain way. So my issue can be triggered around fear of people. So if people treat me in a certain way or speak to me in a certain way, then I can have a fearful response, say, and then I can be triggered into like something like freeze or pleasing or avoiding, like these different responses. But that's not happiness. That's what our bodies do. That's not freedom. Freedom is recognizing that who you are is this consciousness. This is a pattern that runs in the body. And when you clearly see that you don't have to get over these issues, you don't have to get over these feelings to be free, all of that can be embraced. There's no shame in that. It's just, it's not even luck, because luck implies separation. It's just the way things happen. You know, the karma that you get from your childhood, or the karma that happens through your parents and through your family line, it's simply the karma, and there's nothing shameful or wrong about that. And every being is perfect. There's not, like, people that had healthier childhoods are not more free. They're not better people, or they're not happier people necessarily. They maybe have a easier time in relating, but that's not freedom. Freedom is presence. The reason that it gets confused is that these dynamics often create a lot of seeking. And the seeking is the belief that you've got to get rid of them, that you mustn't experience that discomfort, that you mustn't be that. Like every part of you is welcome. I feel so sad sometimes when I think about Khaleesi. I have a dog called Khaleesi. And Khaleesi didn't have the easiest beginning in this life. And I'm sure I was a contributor to that. Like she was a street dog, and her family got run over and squished. And then the person that was feeding her didn't want to feed her anymore because they didn't want a dog. And then my friend brought her to me and then said, you can have a dog, but I didn't want her because I was living in Thailand for half the year and then going back to Europe, and I didn't want a dog in that situation. So then when she came to me, this traumatized puppy, then I was trying to look for a different home from her, and I didn't really want her. And then I couldn't find anyone else that wanted her because she wasn't exactly always very friendly, and she's a street dog and people don't want street dogs. And so then I brought her back to Europe, and I think this was traumatizing for her as well. And when I look at her, like, I can see her traumas very clearly, and I can see the ones that I created in her, and the ones that were created from being a street dog. And I think that would be so sad if somebody taught her that that was wrong, like that those reactions were wrong. Like every part of her is welcome. It even makes me feel a little teary now. So she has trauma with other dogs. So when she sees other dogs, not all other dogs, but some other dogs, I can see her heckles instantly go up. But we've worked a lot, and she doesn't normally like bark or growl at them anymore. But I can see the fear there, the heckles go up. And like I'd feel sad if like another dog taught her non-duality, and she began to believe that in order to be free or in order to be a good dog, she shouldn't have that fear. That fear is a part of that being and that experience now. And however long that she has to express that, like, I love her and life loves her. It's so welcome. It makes me teary to think of it, actually, and it feels sad that non-duality does that in a way. It makes us think that we've got to get rid of things. But she's such a perfect expression, every part of her. How does that make you feel when I say that?
Relieved. Open. I'm aware. I understand now.
Yeah. And so when you have these feelings that want to reject part of yourself, just notice that consciousness isn't rejecting that. It's never rejected it. There's something that's conscious of that, and it's absolutely embraced. There's no part of you that needs to be rejected. No matter what it is, no matter how gross or horrible we think it is, consciousness doesn't turn its back. It's total unconditioned love. Your essence, what's looking, is unconditioned love. It's like an expression of love. Like this world it's like all things happen, the good, the bad, the right, the wrong, the ugly, the beautiful, and consciousness holds all of it equally.
Well, Lisa, I as I said, I respect you very much, and you have a good heart, and I like listening to you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your question. Lovely to speak with you. Thank you. Bye. Layered. That was my grand's last name, Layered. Okay. Okay, so this is for Christian now. Hey, Christian.
Hey.
Hey.
We got there in the end.
Yeah. Am I saying your name right, Christian?
Yeah, it's Christian. So, like, obviously, Krishna.
Christian.
You know,
Can you just say it for
yeah,
me,
so it's
please?
Christian.
Christian.
So, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Christian, yeah.
Krishna for the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Thank you for calling, and thank you for calling back. I can imagine that was a little bit stressful for you earlier.
Yeah, I get what it is now. So basically, there's a delay. So I'm actually watching you on YouTube now, but I've turned the volume down on my computer because I'm ringing you off my phone. So I understand there's like a bit of a latency, isn't there? So yes, we got there in the end.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of background about myself. So just a quick synopsis in terms of I've been on the spiritual path for about 2 or 3
Two or three weeks or years? Yeah.
Like seriously, or 2 or 3 hours. No, yeah, 2 or 3 years. But no, I kind of not said goodbye completely to the material world, but the hedon that I used to live no longer appeals to me. Spiritual path, I guess, like an powerful like metaphor for me is like snakes and ladders. So the game Snakes and Ladders. So
yeah, actually, do you know Krishna?
Like in terms of the way I was playing on the material board before, and obviously.
Christian, sorry to interrupt you, but no, it's not that. It's that your internet is cutting in and out, and I just can't quite grasp what you're telling me. Is there a way that you could switch internets? Do you have like phone internet or something you could go onto? Or maybe you could turn off the streaming and that would give you more internet or something.
Turn off the streaming?
Yeah, like turn off your the computer internet.
So right. Okay. Let me give this a go.
Okay. Hello.
Can you hear me better now?
Let's see. It was what it was doing. It was every at the end of the sentence, it kept cutting out or stopping or something. So let's see what happens.
I've just changed it from Wi-Fi to 4G now.
Yeah, that might be better. Yeah, to 4G. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so sorry, if you could just start that story again. You were saying you've been on the path for 2 or 3 years.
2 or 3 years, yeah, kind of led a hedonistic, materialistic existence. Still, still obviously, you have to play. You've got to kind of, play a part in this world, and so you can't completely escape duality. Yeah. But I'm kind of, so kind of obviously now I've got I'm orientated towards self-realization rather than a fictitious form of happiness that the material world can't give you. So I think, a good powerful analogy for me would be snakes and ladders. So I was playing snakes and ladders before on the material board, but obviously there's no end in sight when it comes to happiness. So I'm on the spiritual board now. And coincidentally, as a bit of a spiritual coincidence, is that when I actually looked up the game Snakes and Ladders, the actual origin actually comes from India, and it was actually to do with self-realization.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so the insight was 3 days ago, and I thought, oh my God, yeah. So the snakes on the spiritual board actually represented vice, and the ladders represented virtue.
Wow.
So yeah, so obviously, but but I guess, Lisa, one of my main questions is obviously there's a lot of people on the spiritual board, and they like, they follow their respective gurus, or they jump from guru to guru or whatever. It just seems like obviously there are millions of seekers, and obviously we know people who've self-realized, and I don't know whether you're self-realized. I mean, I don't know how you can really know completely, but then, I guess you have to use your intuitions to a degree, but it just seems like we know the Ramana Maharshis, we know, or, the names, the Papajis, but it just seems like obviously the odds are clearly stacked against the seeker. It seems like it's a one in a million, and I just feel like, what is that? And I studied this thing called Advaita Vedanta, which obviously they say it's to do with your vasanas and the karmic imprint from previous lives. So that's going to kind of be an obstacle for you actually, getting 99 on the board of snakes and ladders, and then, leaping into getting into 100, so be permanently abiding in the self. But is it a case of, is there more suffering on the spiritual board? But, like for people on the material board, probably they're looking at the people on the spiritual board and thinking, there's not many people who actually find self-realization. Probably ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
And it's one of those where I think, it's just, I think sort of Star Wars, at least they had a system with Jedis where they are actually producing Jedis at a frequently. You could realize you're in a Jedi, and, you had a Jedi council. Seems like, like the Mujis and every one of them, when they disappear, who's going to take over type of thing? It's kind of, I mean, I understand that there are people who find self-realization and they don't want to participate in the material, they don't want to teach, they don't want to do nothing, they're just happy to abide in the self and remain connected to the totality. But then it just seems, I don't know, as I said, I mean, I feel like I'm making some kind of spiritual progress, and perhaps you can tell me. I mean, the thing is that, and I don't want to say it because I want to remain anchored to humility, because I don't want my ego to take place. So when I say, oh, am I making spirit? I just want to kind of ask you whether, like, say, for example, I'm meditating. I've got this deep yearning, but, say, for example, in the last 6-7 months or so, nature seems to have kind of completely taken a different tint, it has a completely different, I perceive it in a completely different way. Everything's gone very high def. I'd say everything seems in high resolution, high definition. I would say stillness does creep in from time to time. It's not there permanently, but I can feel it at times. And I'm doing things that are considered, that are more sattvic. Say, for example, in you'd probably know that like waking up at 4 a.m, and I seem to have more clarity of mind, and ideas seem to be coming through, but more, pure wholesome ideas seem to be flooding through. But I don't know if these are all good signs of, to show that when you are, you're heading in the right direction. But yeah, it's a bit of a battle. So as I said, are the odds stacked up against the seeker? Secondly, I mean, this is no slight on you, but I just feel like, with non-duality and things like that at the moment, I feel like there's going to be, could that, is there a danger of it turning into an industry? Just in the same way, yoga has been compromised, and yoga, most people now, when you, like, words evoke images. When most people think of yoga, they think of exotic postures, and when you study yoga, and I was one of these people, I was a casualty. I fell victim to that, thinking that yoga was just about exotic postures, probably laced with a bit of spirituality. But in fact, it's only when you learn Vedanta, when you learn, you go into it, it's actually only 5% of what it's about. You've got the knowledge, you've got the devotional part, and you've got the action part, the service part, and it just feels like, I don't know, will spiritual realization become an industry in the future where it will make it even more confusing for the sincere seeker like me? Well, do you understand? Sorry.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's always difficult to know if we truly understand each other. That's an interesting concept. But I think I get your drift.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question was, so I've forgotten what the first question was because I'm thinking about the second one. So can we just answer the second one first?
So back to my spiritual, so my snakes of ladders analogy, that obviously there's millions of seekers out there, but there's very few that find self-realization.
Yeah. Okay.
Are the odds stacked up against the seeker?
Yeah. I really don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It's very abstract, the notion. Like, it's abstract, the notion that that there is all these seekers out there to me. And it's abstract, the idea that they're trying to get to freedom and that they may or may not get to freedom. I know that seems abstract, that I would think that, but it is kind of abstract, all those ideas. Like, so it's abstract that you're not free now.
Mm-hmm.
It might not feel like that because your story reports back to you that you're not free, and then you might think that I am free. Whereas really, I don't even know if I'm free or not free, because that's also abstract. Like, mm-hmm. I just am, and you just are. But the story that you've been told your whole life is that there's somebody moving through time, and there's somebody that will become free or won't become free, and there's people that are free and aren't free. And then there is a belief in that story. And that's okay, all of that. Those are words that are appearing. But the consciousness that's happening now is not affected by that. The consciousness is free. The consciousness is embracing both sides. The person thinks, I'm going to find freedom in me, so it's me that's going to become free. But what actually happens is there is like a shift back to that which is watching, which is always here. And when we look in the story world, it's always an abstraction. So it's abstract that you're going to get enlightened or not get enlightened in the future, and it's abstract that you're not free now. But that I can imagine that's also uncomfortable to hear.
Absolutely, and probably, and I understand what you're saying, and obviously I think there's also a linguistic divide between the spiritual community and the common man on the street, because people wouldn't understand what you just said for most people. But I understand that basically, yes, we are already free, we just don't know it. But it's the actual embodiment of that. When you embody that, when people say that you abide in the self, it's like, no, you're still attached to your ego. That's what, most people, they just can't dissolve that ego. It's actually been established in that consciousness, and it's like everyone, I understand all the Mujis and yourself, and everyone's pointing to it, but it's like that penny's not dropping for most people.
And what's the interest in that story for you?
Sorry?
What's the interest? Like, why are you interested in that story? So everyone will have their stories that they're interested in, and it normally is a pattern. Like, it's normally a pattern of stories that we're interested in. Like, Lisa's pattern used to be goodness. It still can come up, goodness as well. But so what's your interest in that?
Because I am a seeker, I've got a deep yearning. But as I said, it's knowing that I'm on this spiritual board now. I'm not going back to the material board. But I obviously want to know that, like, literally, like, are the odds stacked, as you said, like as I said, that, like the Mujis, the Sadhgurus, they've got millions of followers. There's millions of people in this, on this seeking spiritual board, but very few get to, that state of self-realization. And I just understand, why don't these pointings, what are the barriers in the way? Why aren't there as many success stories? Why aren't there as many Jedis coming through?
And what would happen to you if you gave up that question? Like, what would that feel like, to give up that question?
Yeah, one less thought.
Is there anything deeper than that? Like, is there like anything else that doesn't want to let that go? I'm not saying that that wasn't deep, your answer, it was deep, but I mean, like, is there anything underneath that? Like, is there any energetic attachment to that story? Like, is there a victim story
Yeah.
that's there or something? Like, I just ask this because to me, like, the barrier is the question.
Well,
not the
I think
answer.
mine is just I want to get, because obviously with this in the spiritual world, there's a lot of different answers that people, and I'm asking you because I will ask other people. I will ask
I
Ruth
think
the
that's really
Spira the
wise.
same.
Yeah, I think it's
I
really
will ask,
wise to get different answers to
absolutely.
questions,
So
not have like one that's the right way. Yeah.
precisely, and through getting those answers, the penny may drop.
Mm.
So you know, as you said, we know that. I mean, I don't know about your spiritual, how you got to the top of the board. You know, some people can get there from, you know, position 3 all the way. You know, it's very rare that happens, but then most people are on the progressive path, and you know, they're just plodding along, and they, you know, climbing ladders and slipping down snakes.
But have you ever wondered if the ladders are as much illusory as the snakes? Like you see the ladders as the good thing, like virtue is the good thing, and what was the snakes called?
Vice. Yeah, that's what the game in the 1300s suggested. I mean, life does feel like that, but I agree. I understand what you're saying, that basically they're all kind of illusory in this, but you know, to break, you have to use the ego in order to dissolve the ego, don't you? That's the thing.
Yeah, but so let me tell the story of the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree. Like, I'll just wrap it up really quickly. See, he sat under the Bodhi tree, and Maya presented heaven and hell, and the Buddha did not move. And the way that the Maya presented heaven and hell was through virgins, was through joy, was through excitement, was through death, through a war, through disease, through family, through spiritual enlightenment. And the Buddha did not move. And it doesn't mean that the Buddha as a person did not move. So like people think that the Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree for 40 days and 40 nights and did not move as a person. But what it means is there's something else that did not move. So to me, what happens when you're asking that question is there's something in you that attaches to that question. So there's something in that story in which you're attached to, and you think that the answer is the resolution, but what actually is the resolution? And sometimes the resolution can be the answer, is in that will stop the attachment actually. But it's what I'm trying to point to is it's not actually getting the answer. It's the dropping of this story. This story doesn't have truth in it. It doesn't go anywhere. Like, your consciousness is free right now, but there's something that wants to go into that. And that's the barrier, that wants to go into the story. So even in the I know, like you came up with I know, who knows? What knows?
Yeah, no, I'm trying to process that in my mind at the moment.
And
the story is obviously the yearning. What is that story erecting an obstacle?
And then there's
and
then there's somebody that wants to get over that story, and in all of that movement, there's something that's watching that never moves.
No, I get that, and I can connect with that awareness at times. It just feels like this is my path.
Yeah.
This is happening. It's just, you know, whatever is happening, even if I'm kind of, you know, attached to this story, this is my route. But objectively, I'm just saying that, as if you were to basically, if you were on that material board and you were looking over and you're thinking, right, okay, spirit, they're saying that basically, yes, you know, you are already happy, you are already enough. Okay, how many people on the spiritual board actually are established in that understanding? Seems like most people, and whether you say it's a story, if I'm attached to it, I think it's just something we can objectively see, that we know the spiritual realized, we can count them on one, you know, two hand, you know, like we can count them on one hand, or, you know, maybe, you know, but put them on a list. But it's the ratio of people who get to the top of the board compared to the number of people who try, you know, there's a massive difference. And you're offering that. That's what I'm saying. You're offering liberation, aren't you? And I don't know how many people, you know, you've enlightened, you know, you've got to the top of the board. I don't know, but it just seems like it's objectively speaking that it's the odds are stacked up against the seeker. Sorry, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. I just don't have anything else to say about that. I mean, there's many things that could be said, but yeah.
Is it worth playing the game? I'm on that board now. I can't look back. I just feel like.
And you assume that the end of the game, so getting to the end of the game or the end of the board, is liberation. And that's what you assume, and that's what you're going after, and that's what you assume that I'm teaching, or that I'm offering to people.
Mm. I don't know. As I said, I'm getting conflicting advice. I've got one guy who says if they're charging a fee per hour, Runaway, you know, would Ramana Maharshi have charged his students? I don't know. You see, that's the thing. How do you discern the authenticity of a true teacher? I don't understand. I don't know. It's something that you have to use. You're pretty much left to your own devices and your own intuitions, aren't you?
Yeah, and then there's the mistake that there is a teacher, rather than life is the teacher.
Exactly. So maybe that's probably just let life and your inner guru.
Yeah, and there's so many different like objections, because you could see like if somebody doesn't charge money, you could also look at it as in like they maybe don't respect themselves enough. So there's all different ways in which that could be looked at. It could be true that if they charge money, run away a mile, but it also could be if they don't charge money, maybe they don't have correct boundaries. Because it's not as simple as what we think. And then also the idea that there is these teachers that are enlightened that can teach you, rather than like life being the teacher. Because who is me and who is you? Like, who is this me that's teaching you? Who is this you that's listening to me? There is like dynamics coming out. There's dynamics from you, there's dynamics from me, there's words coming out. And you assume that Lisa, the character, is teaching you. Whereas actually it's life playing both roles. So actually life is the teacher. When I feel that when that is really seen, then you can never find a wrong teacher, and you can never find a wrong teaching.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think the teacher can manifest in so many ways, can't it? I mean, that's what I find. I'm fine. You know, there are the Advaita Vedanta school that I'm at. They'll say surrender yourself to one guru, but then I'm at odds with that as well, because I can just look at nature. I can look at a tree. I can listen to music, a verse of a song.
What about if instead of like you say that you're at odds with it, what about if you were to rephrase it to that you're really open-minded and you can see it from lots of different angles? Like, and it doesn't mean that one has to be true. It's like it's that they've all got truth and wisdom in them, and life is so much more complex than we can put into words.
Yeah, no, I agree. But as you said, it's like if someone said that there's a heaven and a hell, and just there, could you, in your paradigm, could you accept that? If someone said, right now, there's just two, the moment we die, it's just heaven or hell. There's an eternal heaven and there's an eternal hell.
Yeah.
Would you be at odds with that, or would you say, "Oh, right, no, I can accept that"?
Yeah, that's interesting movement from what we said before. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like the way conversations go. Like in my mind, that's like it's like an interesting move that you present there. Because when I said that open-mindedness thing, I wasn't implying that you accept everything as being the truth. It's like seeing it from all different angles. Like I can also see from like myself, when I look at Christianity, I can appreciate how the idea of heaven and hell might have appeared, and that it might not be what typical Christians believe, that there's eternal heaven and eternal hell. It might be more reflecting to like karma and to the way that we think. Like it might be so. Like it's just, yeah, it doesn't really matter. Like in the sense they're all words appearing. And seeing that none of the words, none of the stories, none of the teachers, none of the teachings are it. What is it is beyond all words and here watching and has no issue with anything. It's alive, it's present, it's conscious.
Yep. I agree. Because the thing is, as you said, there does seem to be a linguistic divide. As you said, the alive, just as I said, most people, how do you even get people on that first rung of the ladder when most people are very unconscious? And, if you were to speak to the common man on the street and saying, right, it's alive, it's conscious, they would just not know what you're talking. They'd think, what are you blabbering on about? But I understand. I know what you're talking to. I felt it. I don't abide in it. It's certainly, touched me, and I feel like I'm heading in the right direction. But it just obviously it's a different language game to.
Yeah, I would like, if I give any advice, and really, I'm not a teacher that says that I'm right and this must be taken on board. Like it's there. I'll dangle it out, and if there's interest in it, then you can look into that, and if not, just chuck it away. It really doesn't matter. But the advice that I would give to you is to look into this idea of you that's going to get there and you that's getting it right or wrong. Like this will have played out, I'm sure, in your previous life before you got into spirituality. Like there seems to be interest in this story, so there seems to be a vibration in your body that has belief in that story. So just investigate that story of that you are on the right or the wrong path. Who is on the right or the wrong path? And that would just be my advice, to investigate that, and that you don't need somebody's approval or disapproval. Like you don't need somebody to validate it or not validate it. But if you do that, if you go and find someone to validate it or not validate it, then that's perfect too. And that might relax something in you and something might shift. But is it related to a belief system that your body carries that has strong judgment about whether you're doing right or wrong, whether you're progressing or not progressing, whether others are progressing or not progressing?
Yeah, no, I'll definitely take that on board. I think, as I said, with just getting validation from others, it could be helpful, because I remember listening to something from Osho, and he said that, you know, when nature, what you'll find is when you do experience a reduction of thoughts, your consciousness starts to invite nature in, and you know, that was just a coincidence, because you know, for the last 6-7 months, my relationship with nature has completely changed. I see trees and anything from the natural world, you know, it just speaks to me. And I don't know whether that is a sign of your, or is it, you know, and I want to remain anchored to the ego. No, sorry, to you know, humility, because, you know, I think people can kind of like think, oh yeah, you know, I'm on the way. I don't want to get there. You know, I don't. But is it a sign? And, you know, a reduction in agitation as well. You know, I will admit, hand on heart, that, you know, things used to irk me, but I think things are becoming less. You know, that they're creating less agitation.
Yeah.
You know, my father is case in point. You know, you know, your close ones know how to get under your skin, and, you know, for me, he's a good barometer in terms of how spiritually I'm spiritually progressing. You know, if I don't feel as agitated as I used to, you know, I'm moving in the right direction, and he doesn't, and there seems to be a background silence every time he says something. You know, there just seems to be a background silence. Yes, but it does. That's what I'm saying. I'm still kind of guilty. I'll fall into the trap. Ego will kind of latch on and think, oh, but it seems to be.
That's really nice.
Receding.
That all of that's receding. That's really nice.
But yeah, these questions that I've asked at you, it's just maybe, I don't know, as you said, where they originate. They're originating from somewhere, but at the same time, I feel like just follow your intuitions and get them out there.
Yeah.
You know,
nice. Yeah.
Okay.
I've forgotten what your second question was. So your first question was that, and then your second question. Oh, maybe it was the second question.
Yeah, that was the second question in terms of, like, you know, like,
nice.
You know, does nature speak to you? Does everything take on a little bit of vibrancy? You know, kind of. I don't know whether you experienced something similar. I don't know, on the path. You know, but in terms of that, what you were saying, from that penny drop moment, how did it happen for you? So when you permanently kind of, you know, like that paradigm shift.
Yeah.
How does it happen? How does one experience that paradigm shift from the ego?
I don't know if your imagination of that paradigm shift is the same as what happened here. Like, and I don't know if it's the same as what happened with Ramana Maharshi or other speakers. Like, there just was, and I don't know if I'm free or not free. Like, I can't step into other people and see what their experience is. Like, I just know what's happening. And what happened 10 years ago was, there was for years before that, this experience that kept happening where there was this like expansion and then a contraction and expansion. And then when I was in Bali, like something happened where the looker just expanded into everything. And then from then it didn't shift back to Lisa looking. But I still have character dynamics, and I still have maybe old seeking patterns or ways of being that are still like expanding and changing. So like Lisa still has issues that she works on, discomforts, but the looker isn't a thing anymore, like an object, which to me is freedom. And no matter how much I worked on myself before, I worked on myself a lot, like that doesn't compare to that shift. Like it's like working on yourself never ends to me, but that's not how other people speak, and I'm not saying that is the way it is, but to me it never ends. And when you squash one dynamic, or when you stop one dynamic, or you change one dynamic, there is other dynamics up here. So and that helped working on things. It helped settle my personality and make me more calm, but it certainly didn't clear everything. Like, Lisa still has unconscious stuff and dynamics going on, and I can learn how to be better in social situations, or all different types of situations. So there's still understanding and learning going on, but none of that is like this energetic shift. This energetic shift to me was the only thing in which really was freeing. And that wasn't a personal thing. Like, so Lisa didn't become enlightened from it. Like, the character didn't become enlightened. The character stuff in lots of cases became more light, but I still have my old dynamics and can slip into old dynamics if I'm not careful of it on the human level. So, but it was like an energetic shift, and it was something that really wasn't mind. It wasn't somebody that got something. It wasn't a mind thing. It was like a shift from being contracted to being a person inside the body, to consciousness, which is expanded, and it feels different from being limited. So it was like an energetic shift. But it didn't free the person. Like, my person still has problems with I'm trying to think of a typical Lisa problem. Like, I can still, if somebody presents certain dynamics that traumatize me in childhood, then I can sometimes freeze or go into pleasing, or not respond in the appropriate way. So I still have to work on these types of things, like the human character level.
The work never ends.
Yeah, well,
I think Lisa, I went to see a guy called John Butler. Don't know whether you've seen him. He's
an older gentleman.
an old. Yes, I kind of spent some time with him, and that's what he said as well. He made quite a big impression on me. I definitely think I found myself I felt more stillness when I was in his presence, and he would prefer you not to speak. He'd say, like, if you've got nothing better to say than the stillness, then don't say it at all. But yeah, I mean, like, I could literally go and could go for a walk with him anytime, and but he said he goes, the work never ends. So when you said that just reminded me of what John said.
Yeah, it's not a personal thing. Like, to me, life expands. So life is always expanding. So when I was in India, this sadhu said to me, knowledge is infinite. And of course knowledge is infinite, but I'd just never thought of it in that terms before. And so the work on the person is infinite. The possibilities of expansion is infinite. The possibility of kindness is infinite. Like, everything is infinite. So to me, I feel like it's a balanced way to see waking up, but I know a lot of different teachers would disagree with that. So that's just my personal perspective, is that seeing that you on the human level can infinitely change and infinitely expand stops this belief, or it doesn't stop it, but it negates, I suppose, or something, this belief that you on the human level will ever arrive. Because when people think they've arrived, they haven't. Because you can't arrive. Who would arrive? So it could be like another tripping point. Like, who would arrive? But maybe that's enough for tonight. I normally only speak till 8 o'clock. It's 8 minutes past 8 now.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry to have hogged the mic, but
That's
no,
okay.
that's been very useful.
Oh, nice. And you can listen back to it afterwards. So maybe it will be on YouTube, so it might be useful. Because sometimes when you're speaking live to someone, because there's like, I don't know, 100 or so people listening, then you can forget things that are said.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
and I'll
not
probably
hear
learn
things.
from it as well, which would be great. So
Yeah, nice. Yeah, lovely to speak with you. Thank you for calling in.
yeah, no, lovely to speak to you too.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Okay, my lovely fellow people, thank you so much for asking questions, interacting, for giving me the space to do these talks. I really appreciate it, speaking to you. It's such a joy to express non-duality. Like it's like even for the Lisa character, expressing it, it's like, it's not me that expresses it, like obviously, but it's like I'm not complimenting Lisa, I'm just talking about those words. Like I just find it so beautiful, this subject. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a beautiful evening or day or afternoon, and I shall see you next